did you ever think what it would be like traveling along in an open car without a windshield? Boy, you wouldn't go very far before you got all splattered with mud. And you'd have to keep your eyes closed so as not to be blinded by the dust. Well, when you're traveling along in life, Rangers, common sense acts as a pretty important windshield. It lets you see where you're going.
I am the greatest.
Welcome, everyone. Happy Sunday. Hope everyone is doing wonderful on this great day. Great rising, grand rising, wherever you are out in the world. Some are probably in California. Some probably are in some parts of the United States. And we also might have some of our international brothers and sisters listening. My name is Imoya of Emend the Mass Media Group. And we have some wonderful guest readers in the building today. I'll let them introduce themselves. I guess we'll start off with Miss Friday and then Miss Sharice, if y'all want to go next.
I am Friday Jones, President of the National Assembly of American Slavery Descendants and Vice Chair of the Los Angeles Reparations Advisory Commission. But today, all of my comments will be my own. That's it. That's the short version.
All right, Sharice.
All right. Good morning, family. Yes, I'm coming to you from CDMX, as they call it. My name is Sharice Cryer. I am a lawyer and a reparations advocate, and I'm so glad to be back for part two.
Part two in the building. All right, family. So before we actually get to the read, I want to go through some housekeeping. So as usual, please like, share, and subscribe. If you have not seen or been to the CJEC-official.org, please check out the website, the Coalition for Just and Equitable California. They're doing a great job and advocacy work for supporting California reparations. So please go sign up, get on the newsletter to see what's happening right here in California. So goes California, so goes the nation. Thursdays at 7 p.m. We are reading the California Reparations Task Force Final Report. That's on CJEC's YouTube channel, so please check that out there. And usually on Sundays, we have our Road to Reparations community show, but we are taking a hiatus off for Memorial Day weekend. So shout out to my partners, Kim Mims and Darlene Crumity, for contributing, doing great work in this reparations space. So I always got to give them a shout out. And if you have yet to see the reparations doc movie, that's reparationsdoc.com. And I need to give, as always, our good sister Friday in the building for contributing to this wonderful documentary. And so just want to thank you and thank everyone for contributing to this documentary. And you can actually see it free on Tubi. If you have yet to see it, go to Emend the Mass Media Group. That's etnmediagroupstore.com. That's etnmediagroupstore.com to pick up your latest reparations gear. And I know y'all shop on Amazon. I know y'all do. So please click on that affiliate link. It will be in the description. So all these links will be in the description. So to support what we're doing, we greatly appreciate it. Go ahead and hit that affiliate link, family. And today we're going to be reading the 1866 Reconstruction Treaties between the United States and Oklahoma tribes. Just some background story, context behind that. And if you need to find your California state reps, you can just click on that QR code. Shout out to our CJEC family for creating that QR code and to find your representative. All right. And 4121 plus 1. 41 assembly, 21 senators plus 1 governor equals California reparations. And if you have yet to see the interview / discussion that we did for Senator Bradford, please check that out right here on our page at MNMS Media Group. Senator Bradford is definitely, what can I say? I mean, he's definitely a maverick. And, you know, we got to give the brother his flowers because he's been doing some great work. So shout out to a good brother, Senator Stephen Bradford. And if you would like, please become a member on our YouTube page. You get some behind the scenes content, some other stuff. We actually go in the community and we're going to post that for our members only section. So there's some great information. The last video that we did post, we actually did a community session at a cafe here in Sacramento. So there's great information. We got some folks coming out, got some good feedback. We also went to Sassoon. Folks came out there, and shout out to our Arc Bay Area family for hosting that event. So shout out. And also, SB 1331, SB 1403, SB 1050 passed the Senate floor. We posted this graphic on our YouTube page and Twitter page. So when you have a chance, please check that out. I don't want to go too deep into it, but yes, we're actually going to be going probably deeper discussing this when Darlene and Kim get back. So yep, there you go. And if you have yet to see this graphic, this is the assembly, the current assembly members, and the AB 3121 vote, or for those that were in office at that time, who voted for what and who did not vote for the AB 3121. So we're looking forward to the bills going through the assembly and getting signed by the governor. All right. I'm going to be playing actually before I play the video, we're going to be going through this bill. I guess it was like it's called AB 106, and it was a budget bill that was passed in April. Whew, man, a lot of money out there, family, and I don't know how much is going to the Freedmen. So we're actually going to be going through that as well. Hopefully this week, maybe next week. So be on the lookout for that. But I want to play these two clips and get Friday's and Sharice's opinion before we actually get to the read. So let me play the first clip, and then we'll get to the second clip. All right, here we go.
Mr.
Chair
Chairman,
recognizes Ms. Green.
I'd like to know if any of the Democrats on this committee are employing Judge Merchan's daughter.
Please tell me what that has to do with Merrick Garland.
Is she a porn star?
Oh, Goldman. That's right. He's advising. Okay.
Do you know what we're here for? You know we're here about AG.
I don't think you know what you're here for.
Well, you the one talking about.
I think your fake eyelashes are messing up.
No,
what you're
ain't
reading.
nothing.
Hold on.
Listen.
Order.
Mr. Chairman,
That's beneath
would
even
you
your
please
history.
regain
That's
order
beneath
of your
you.
committee?
Order. Not a
Mister,
point.
I do have a point of order, and I would like to move to take down Ms. Green's words. That is absolutely unacceptable. How dare you attack
meeting will
the
suspend.
physical
Meeting
appearance
will
of another
suspend.
person?
Are your
Move
feelings hurt?
her words down.
Aw.
Oh, girl, baby girl.
Oh, really?
Don't even play.
Baby girl? I don't think
we are going to move, and we're going to take your words down. Thank
I
you.
second that motion.
All right. So thoughts, opinions. What do y'all think about that one?
Why you ain't play the whole clip? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, because we'd probably be here for a whole hour and a half. Yeah, so what y'all think about that one?
So, I think that we need to have term limits, first and foremost. But is our Congress, this is just a rhetorical or general question, is our Congress doing the job of the citizens and actually representing the American people? Are they doing themselves? And to me, a lot of times it seems like the latter. I know if you compare and contrast what happens overseas, especially in some places in Europe, you know, they result to fisticuffs sometimes. So we don't have that, but we don't need decorum. We need people who are actually advocating for our issues and not for themselves. And that comment was totally out of line, speaking on someone's eyelashes. It had nothing to do with what they were talking about.
Friday.
So, yeah, I'm just going to remind everyone of the caning of Charles Sumner back in 1856, which happened actually in the U.S. Senate. So this was, the Congress side, not senators misbehaving. But that particular incident happened when a Republic, well, I don't know, this probably back then was a Dixiecrat. Preston Brooks, a pro-slavery Democrat from South Carolina, of course, attacked Senator Charles Sumner, a Republican abolitionist. You know, these days it's switched, but white supremacy still kind of rules both parties. So it has happened historically, and it's interesting to me. People have a way of throwing rocks and stones, and then when the reaction is stronger than they expected it to be, they cry wolf. So to Sharice's point, there's matters before our legislators that really are important. And if someone lacks the caring for the American people to just stoop so low as to get into physical insults. And I don't know if you guys heard, I don't know what congressman said that, who literally asked, is that a porn star? It's like, what business are you really conducting when you go to work every day?
Absolutely. So let's play a clip where we're actually, conducting some serious business. Here we go.
State agencies and departments tasked with direct implementation of reparations policies.
On a vote of 30-7, the measure passes.
To this very day, I've had the privilege of serving again in the legislature for the last 14 years, and we have voted on dozens of bills about wage theft.
No. On a vote of 29-8, the measure passes.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is a priority of the California Legislative Black Caucus. SB 1050 creates a pathway for restitution to Californians who had their land or property taken by the state or local governments by racially motivated reasons and no other reason.
Dowd. Aye. Grove. Ochoa.
On a vote of 32-5, the measure passes.
All right. So, opinions, thoughts.
You know what? Sharice is the first person in the public that got to ask a question during the actual commission for reparations in the state of California. And to go from witnessing her being that person to seeing Senator Bradford put forth these bills that really will lay a foundation for what needs to be done is an example of all the work and all the people it took to sort of get it there. I'm so just proud of Senator Bradford for going out and putting those foundational bills, especially SB 1331, which establishes an actual funding source, as well as the SB 1050, which I think is is that the one that does, which one? I forget the numbers, the Freedmen Affairs one, the SB 1403 is the Freedmen Affairs one. You know, we as a people were really involved with this process, and I do hope that Congress, now that it's passed the Senate, I hope that the Assembly, I'm sorry, we're talking state, the Assembly actually does what they need to do with the 4121 plus one. Yeah, because does it go to the I'm sorry, it doesn't go to the governor yet, right? It still has to go to the Assembly. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So yeah, I hope that the Assembly people, as we talked about, our Congress people not understanding their job. When you have bills that really show the will of the people, it's their job to make sure that the bills get through. And I just sincerely hope that they do that. So that's my comment on that.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to say a couple of things. I think there is a lack, sometimes, not all the time, lack of understanding of statutory interpretation, but also a genuine reading of some of the proposed legislation. So for example, I had a lot of people that gave me pushback about SB 1050 because of the way it read. They were concerned about how impactful it would be. And my response was, you must read SB 1050 in connection with SB 1403, because you cannot have SB 1050. If you don't have 1403, SB 1050 kind of doesn't even make sense, right? So oftentimes if bills are challenged, if this does eventually get passed, or these bills eventually get signed into law and they're challenged, the legal system is going to look at the statutory, the legislative history. So that's why public comment is important. That is part of the legislative history, right? And so I actually had someone stop talking to me because when I asked them, they don't live in California, but I asked them to support SB 1403, and they were caught up on the actual wording of Freedmen, which didn't make sense to me, because they have an agency or a commission in their state that's a Freedmen's agency or commission, and I'm like, it's the same name. What are you mad about, right? So I think there's a lot going on out here. I would encourage people, listeners, not to necessarily get caught up in certain words. And I said this to the census task force that was updating the census, and I also said this to the commission on Black Americans, the federal commission that was empowered by the White House. It does not matter what we are called, right? That does not matter. What matters is the legal impact. You do not have you have delineation in the Native American community, and this is relevant to what we're going to be talking about later today. But you have the Cherokee, you have Algonquin, you have Blackfoot, Choctaw. But all of those different nations are Native Americans, and they all have the same rights if they are federally recognized. So whether we call ourselves FBA, ADOS, Freedmen, Negro, what have you, we are all under that same umbrella, and we know what the meaning behind that is. And I will say this, and I say this almost daily, anti-Blackness is demonic. And we have to call out anti-Blackness. And that movement to prevent delineation on this on the census, that was anti-Black, that was a demonic movement. But also, we just need to keep in mind again, what we're here for. And I kind of lost my train of thought. Oh, about the assembly members. No, actually, I'm sorry. Let me talk about the state, the senators. I reached out to a couple of the senators that voted no on 1331. I was very calm, very detailed, very professional in my contact with them and their representatives. There's a trend of the people who voted no on 1331 before it reached where it did last week. And they also, it seems all these same people voted no this past week on all of these bills. And my call to you, or call to action, is keep putting pressure on them, keep calling them out. Some of these people are, minorities, quote unquote, minorities themselves, and they should be allies, and they're not. And again, call them out on what they're doing. I saw an assembly member who said he would not vote on any reparations bills, and he identified himself as a child of immigrants. And I said, how do you think your parents got here legally? It was because of the civil rights movement. And if you don't support us, we won't support you. And at the end of the day, politics, voting is an exchange, and we need to be very solid, dig our heels in, and make folks know this is the right thing to do. But if you are not here to support this, you can either get out the way or you can be moved.
Boom. All right. So yeah, no, all facts. Yeah, it's crazy because when we were broadcasting, live streaming, televising, however you want to use the media term, the state hearings of California State Senate hearings, we noticed that there was one senator in particular, Senator Jones, I believe is District 40, maybe, Brian W. Jones. That dude, let alone, he didn't vote for, basically, I don't know if it might be hard to see on the graphic there, but not only did he not vote on any reparations related bills, he barely voted on anything. Like barely anything. So, in addition to, reparations bills, we have to be cognizant of and aware, and as I tell people all the time, that there are other bills that we need to look at too that do impact us, as citizens and residents, in particular here in California and in your state, right? But obviously, we focus on reparations on this particular channel. But anything that's impacting you locally, there's some bills that, could impact your utility, your housing. There's a lot of bills out there that can impact. So I definitely encourage people, in addition to, these reparations bills, in particular 1331, 1403, and 1050, to look into, because it could impact you as an individual. All right. So if Sharice Friday, if you don't have any other things, let me ask you, do you have any other things you want to mention before we go on about the current bills?
Yes, I just wanted to say, in particular, I'll specifically call out Senator Sayarto and Senator Nguyen. I specifically reached out to their offices and tried to, Senator Nguyen is very concerned about veterans. And Senator Sayarto says he's supposed to be Mr. Pro Civil Rights. And they still voted no. And then I want to draw attention to Dave Min. Senator Min was present the entire time. So why is it no votes registered for him? Matter of fact, he had some bills that he was presenting. And he's supposed to be a Democrat. That's someone we need to do some backdoor meeting with, something, because I'm trying to figure out what's up with him. That's all I wanted to point out.
Yeah, and to further Sharice's point, you posted the folks, the incumbents that had voted for AB 3121. As this thing does move over to the assembly side, now is the time to make sure that the folks who are still here will vote for these pieces of legislation. And for the newcomers and the incoming, it's important that we reach out to them as well. Anti-Blackness is real. Honestly, if you assimilate to American culture, regardless of where you are immigrating from, then you will develop anti-Blackness as part of your politics. So it's important that we talk to people regardless of party, regardless of their racial or ethnic categories, because we need these votes to make this happen, full stop. If we don't move it here at this time, then the push that needs to be made at the federal level is going to be that much harder. So this really, really is an important set of legislation, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, thank you, Sharice. Thank you, Friday, for your definitely opinions and 2 cents, because it's definitely important. As you can see on the screen, when AB 3121 was voted on, there were 31 ayes. I guess that's what they call them in legislation. So we need basically 41, so 10 more votes, right? So if all 31 people who voted on AB 3121 who are still in office today voted, in addition to 10 more, we would get the bill passed, or these 3 bills passed through the assembly, so the governor can sign it. So
I'm sorry, I have a question. So I'm looking at some of the names for the assembly, and I do recognize some of them may not have been in office at the time, but I'm just wondering, for those who are part of the CLBC, are they even supporting these bills? Because I question whether they are.
What, we could do a whole show just on this.
Right.
If we remember the press conference that they did, Isaac Bryant honestly was the only person who spoke with his chest out when they did the press conference announcing their 14 bills or what have you. But when you break down even their 14 bills, it's almost offensive, because only 2 of them even remotely have the word descendant in them, and the other 12 bills were bills that they already had in hand.
They were already in the queue, yes. But Isaac Bryant, even though he said what he said, he still went along with the 14, and not one time have I seen him in any of these hearings for Senator Bradford's bills. Not one time.
Right. And I think that needs to be cut out, because I don't know what sort of internal struggles there may be, with that particular caucus. But for us as voters, as the people who really worked hard, again, this is legislation from the people working in concert with our government, which is how government is supposed to function. I agree. I would like to see more of them leave their politics behind a closed door. And when they get in front of a camera, they say, yes, we support Senator Bradford's bill. Don't be mad that it's not part of your package. If you have been working in concert behind closed doors, it would have been. We don't care whether it was or was not, but we do care about the legislation. And so there should be a forward-facing public support for Bradford's bills. And I agree with you on that, Sharice.
Absolutely. All right. So I know we extended our time a little bit, but I think it was definitely worth it. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Let's take this down. All right. So we're going to continue where we left off 3 weeks ago, maybe. I don't know. Maybe it was 3 weeks ago. So I guess I'll go ahead and take the first paragraph, or the paragraphs, or section, I should say. And then, I don't know, Friday, Sharice, whoever wants to go next, you guys can pick it up, and then we'll continue until we reach probably about 45 minutes-ish, hour-ish, and wrap it up. So, all right, so let's see here. I'm going to go back. Okay, assimilation and resistance. I don't know. Can everybody see my screen? See the screen, I should say.
I see the screen, yes.
You see the screen? Sure, you see it. Okay, cool. All right, here we go. Assimilation and resistance. Following the recognition of the 1866 treaty, efforts were made by the Cherokee Nation and other nations to incorporate the Freedmen. As citizens of the Cherokee Nation, freedmen were allowed to vote in local and national elections. By 1875, the inclusion of freedmen in political office was established, with the first Cherokee freedmen elected to the Cherokee National Council. During the 1870s, several segregated freedmen schools were established, with 7 primary schools in operation by 1872. It was not until 1890 that a high school, Cherokee Colored High School, was established near Tahlequah. The Cherokee Nation typically did not fund these schools at a level comparable to those for Cherokee children. Like the resistance of whites to acceptance of freedmen as citizens in the South, many Cherokee resisted inclusion of the freedmen as citizens. This issue became part of the continuing divisions and internal factionalism within the tribe that persisted after the war. In addition, there were tribal members who resented sharing already scarce resources with their former slaves. There were also economic issues related to the forced granting of some lands to freedmen and later allotment of lands and distribution of monies related to land sales. I don't know, Friday or Sharice, you want to pick up the next section?
Sure. Okay, let me go back. Okay. So, tribal records and rolls, 1880 census. In 1880, the Cherokee compiled a census to distribute per capita funds related to the Cherokee Outlet, a tract of land west of the Cherokee Nation that was sold by the Cherokee in the 1870s. The 1880 census did not include a single freedman and also excluded the Delaware and Shawnee who had been adopted into the Cherokee after being allocated land at their reservation between 1860 and 1867. In the same year, the Cherokee Senate voted to deny citizenship to freedmen who applied past the 6-month deadline specified by the 1866 Cherokee Treaty. Yet there were freedmen who had never left the nation who were also denied citizenship. The Cherokee claimed that the 1866 treaty with the U.S. granted civil and political rights to Cherokee freedmen, but not the right to share in tribal assets. Principal Chief Dennis Wolf Bushied opposed the exclusion of Cherokee freedmen from distribution of assets and believed that the freedmen's omission from the 1880 census was a violation of the 1866 treaty. But his veto to pass an act that added a by blood requirement for the distribution of assets was overridden by the Cherokee National Council in 1883.
All right. And Friday or Sharice, if you want to comment on anything, go ahead and please comment, brief or not. But if you want to comment, please do so.
Anti-blackness on full display. Dang, we can't even get a piece of the land.
Yep.
Nope. No, we cannot. The crazy thing about it, Johnson, when he ended like the whole Freedmen's Bureau, and he's like, in his speech, he says something to the effect of, these people, these Africans can basically have Negroes, because they didn't call us Africans by then, but the Negroes can have full participation in citizenship. And if I am wrong, like a presidential order can be made to restore. And basically the United States treated us like these Cherokee, like, y'all not get none of these assets. Y'all don't get the vote. Y'all don't get nothing. If you do anything, we're going to have unspoken rules where the people going to make sure you can't get to the voting or you can't get to your full citizenship. And like, we still live that, and people think we don't, but we do. Anyway.
Absolutely. Friday, you want to take this?
Yep. 1888 Wallace rolls. We didn't know about Dawson. Let's learn about Wallace. In the 1880s, the federal government became involved on behalf of the Cherokee freedmen. In 1888, the U.S. Congress passed an act to secure the Cherokee freedmen and others their portion of certain proceeds of land. October 19th, 1888, 25 statute 608, which included a special appropriation of $75,000 to compensate the failure of the tribe to pay them money owed. Special Agent John W. Wallace was commissioned to investigate and create a roll, now known as the Wallace Roll, to aid in the per capita distribution of federal money. The Wallace Roll, completed from 1889 to 1897, with several people working on it, included 3,524 freedmen. The Cherokee Nation continued to challenge the rights of freedmen. In 1890, by passing an act to refer to the U.S. Court of Claims certain claims of the Shawnee and Delaware Indians, and the freedmen of the Cherokee Nation. October 1, 1890, 26 Statute 636, the U.S. Congress authorized the United States Court of Claims to hear suits by the freedmen against the Cherokee Nation for recovery of proceeds denied them. The freedmen won the claims court case that followed, Whitmire versus Cherokee Nation and the United States, 1912. The Cherokee Nation appealed it to the U.S. Supreme Court. It related to treaty obligations of Cherokee Nation to the United States. The claims court ruled that payments or annuities and other benefits could not be restricted to a particular class of Cherokee citizens, such as those by blood. This ruling was upheld by the Supreme Court, thus affirming the rights of freedmen and their descendants to share in tribal assets. Honey, if that is not a basis for us to sue the United States, because, and I put this up in my tweet, when everyone talks about the 40 acres and a mule with field order from General Sherman, field order 15, but we were supposed to have land. We were supposed to have self-governance. We were supposed to have the ability to have our own military. And so we got none of that with these United States. We got no protections. We got nothing. And then when the compromise of 1877 happened, right, when white folks was terrorizing all the black folks, we had the Red Summer going on. When that in some years later, but that was a result of the U.S. Marshals being withdrawn with that treaty from 1877. So these are really important treaties for us to understand, because they help us in our fight as American freedmen. So I'm gonna stop right there.
All right.
I want to say I agree with what Friday's saying. This is important precedent. And I would encourage everyone to read. The name of the book is slipping my mind, but the author is Boris Bitker. He is not African American. I believe he's Jewish, but he wrote a book in the 1970s and basically went through the history of lawsuits that we have filed to try to get reparations. And trying to sue is very tricky because you have various statute of limitations. But I will point out the Greenwood lawsuit, the one that's in Oklahoma right now, they have a novel claim in that the nuisance was never extinguished. So they're tying the claim from the Greenwood massacre to the present, and so that is very that's a hard thing to try to get approved in a court. And so for me, trying to use a court as a means to get redress, unless it's enforcement of something, of a benefit, is very hard to do, again, because of statute of limitations. That's why I'm for executive order, because you see the president right now is sending all kind of weapons over to Israel by executive order. So go on ahead and write that executive order for us.
Ashe, touche, and all that. Well spoken. All right, so let's see here. I am going to take the next two sections because the next section is pretty short, and let's continue. 1894 to 1896 Kern-Clifton Roll. As the Cherokee Nation had already distributed the funds they had received for sale of the Cherokee outlet, the U.S. government, as co-defendant, was obligated to pay the award to the Cherokee freedmen. It commissioned the Kern-Clifton Roll, completed in 1896, as a record of the 5,600 freedmen who were to receive a portion of the land sale funds at settlement. The payment process took a decade. All right. 1898 to 1907 Dawes Rolls. Prior to the distribution of proceeds, Congress had passed the Dawes Severalty Act of 1887. It was a measure to promote assimilation of Native Americans in the Indian Territory by requiring the extinguishing of tribal government and land claims. Communal lands were to be allotted to individual households of citizens registered as tribal members in order to encourage subsistence farming according to the European American model. The U.S. government would declare any remaining lands to be, quote, surplus, end quote, to communal Indian needs and allowed it to be bought and developed by non-Native Americans. This resulted in massive losses of land for the tribes. As a part of the act and subsequent bills, the Dawes Commission was formed in 1893 and took a census of the citizens in Indian Territory from 1898 to 1906. The Dawes Rolls, officially known as the final rolls of the citizens and freedmen of the 5 civilized tribes, I'm going to repeat that again, officially known as the final rolls of the citizens and freedmen of the 5 civilized tribes in Indian Territory, listed individuals under the categories of Indians by blood, intermarried whites, and freedmen. The rolls were completed in March 1907, and additional citizens were enrolled under an act of Congress on August 1st, 1914. Although freedmen frequently had Cherokee ancestry and sometimes living Cherokee parents, the Dawes Commissioners generally listed all freedmen or people of visible African features exclusively on the freedmen roll, rather than recording an individual's percentage of Cherokee ancestry. It was not an orderly process. The Dawes Rolls of 1902 listed 41,798 citizens of the Cherokee Nation and 4,924 persons listed separately as freedmen. Intermarried whites, mostly men, were also listed separately. The genealogist Angela Y. Walton Raji said that together, the 5 civilized tribes had nearly 20,000 freedmen listed on the Dawes Rolls. The 1898 Curtis Act, sponsored by U.S. Senator Charles Curtis Kaw Nation from Kansas, was also intended to encourage assimilation. It authorized the Dawes Commission to allot funds without the consent of tribal governments and allowed the federal government to extract taxes from white citizens living in the Indian territories. American Indians have considered both the Dawes and Curtis Acts as restrictions on tribal sovereignty. The government distributed allotments of land, and there have been many claims of unfair treatment and errors in the registration process. For instance, some 1,659 freedmen listed on the current Clifton Roll were not registered on the Dawes Rolls, and therefore lost their Cherokee citizenship rights. As the Cherokee Nation's government was officially dissolved and Oklahoma became a state in 1907, the Cherokee freedmen and other Cherokee were granted U.S. citizenship. Numerous activities have criticized inconsistencies in the information collected in the Dawes Rolls. Several tribes have used these as a basis for proving descent in order to qualify for membership. In previous censuses, persons of mixed African-Native American ancestry were classified as Native American. The Dawes Commission set up 3 classifications: Cherokee by blood, intermarried white, and freedmen. The registrars generally did not consult with individuals as to how they identified. Overall, the Dawes Rolls is incomplete and inaccurate. In the later 20th century, the Cherokee and other Native Americans became more assertive about their sovereignty and rights. Issues of citizenship in reorganized tribes was critical to being part of the nation. In testimony as a member of the Cherokee Nations Association before the Indian Claims Commission on November 14, 1960, Gladys Lanigan discussed specific problems in the records for her family. I was born in 1896 and my father died August 5th, 1897, but he didn't get my name on the Dawes Roll. I have 2 brothers on the roll, one on the roll by blood and one other by Cherokee freedmen children's allottees. She said that one of her paternal grandparents was Cherokee and the other African American. There have also been cases of mixed race Cherokee of partial African ancestry with as much as 1/4 Cherokee blood, equivalent to one grandparent being full blood, but who were not listed as, quote, Cherokee by blood, end quote, in the Dawes rolls because of having been classified only in the Cherokee Freedmen category. Wow. Thus, such individuals lost their blood claim to Cherokee citizenship despite having satisfied the criterion of having a close Cherokee ancestor. In 1924, Congress passed a jurisdictional act that allowed the Cherokee to file suit against the United States to recover the funds paid to freedmen in 1894 to 1896 under the Kern-Clifton Roll. It held that the Kern-Clifton Roll was valid for only that distribution and was superseded by the Dawes Rolls in terms of establishing the Cherokee tribal list of membership. With passage of Indian Claims Commission Act of 1946, Congress established a commission to hear cases of Indian claims. Numerous descendants of the 1,659 freedmen who had been recorded on the Kern-Clifton Roll, but not on the Dawes Rolls, organized to try to correct the exclusion of their ancestors from Cherokee tribal rolls. They also sought payments from which they had been excluded. All right, I will stop there. Any comments? If not, I guess Friday, if you want to pick up, or
It's Sharice.
pick up the next one. Is it your turn, Sharice? I can't remember.
Yeah, before we go on, I just have a quick comment. Not all tribes were federally recognized when a lot of these treaties were taking place. So to the point about the Dawes Roll being inaccurate, I would agree because, again, everyone was not federally recognized. That came in waves over the year. But if you look at the time period when the freedmen started to lose their rights, was the time that Reconstruction ended, and that was a lot of political turmoil and violence in America against Black bodies during that time period. So I just want to point that out. Okay, so loss of membership. On October 22nd, 1970, the former 5 civilized tribes had the right to vote for their tribal leaders restored by Congress via the Principal Chiefs Act. In 1971, the Department of the Interior stated that one of the 3 fundamental conditions for the electoral process was that voter qualification of the Cherokee, Choctaw, Cree, and Seminole must be broad enough to include the freedmen citizens of their respective nations. The freedmen were issued voter cards by the Cherokee Nation, headed by Principal Chief W.W. Killer, and participated in the first Cherokee elections since the 1900s, as well as subsequent elections. In the 1970s, the Bureau of Indian Affairs began to provide several federal services and benefits, such as free health care, to members of federally recognized tribes. Numerous descendants of Cherokee listed as Cherokee by blood on the Dawes Commission rolls enrolled as new members of the Cherokee Nation. As members of the Cherokee Nation, federal services were also provided to the Cherokee freedmen. However, certain benefits were limited or unattainable. In a letter to official Jack Ellison in 1974 regarding freedmen eligibility for BIA and Indian Health Service benefits, Ross O. Swimmer, then Principal Chief of the Cherokee Nation, stated that the freedmen citizenry to be entitled to certain health benefits like other enrolled Indians. A new Cherokee Constitution, approved by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs on September 5, 1975, was ratified by voters on June 26, 1976. Article 3, Section 1 of the new Constitution defines citizens as those proven by reference to the final Dawes Commission rolls, including the adopted Delaware and Shawnee. Efforts to block the freedmen descendants from the tribe began in 1983 when Principal Chief Swimmer issued an executive order stating that all Cherokee Nation citizens must have a CDIB card in order to vote instead of the previous Cherokee Nation voter cards that were used in 1971. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? The CDIB cards were issued by the Bureau of Indian Affairs based on those listed on the Dawes Commission rolls as Indians by blood. Since the Dawes Commission never recorded Indian blood quantum on the Cherokee Freedmen roll or the Freedmen Miners roll, the freedmen cannot obtain CDIB cards. Although there were Dawes enrollees received funds resulting from tribal land sales via the U.S. Supreme Court ruling in Whitmire versus Cherokee Nation in the U.S. 1912, and voted in previous Cherokee Nation elections, the Cherokee Freedmen descendants were turned away from the polls and told that they did not have the right to vote. According to Principal Chief Swimmer in a 1984 interview, both the Voter Registration Committee and the Tribal Membership Committee had introduced new rules in the period between 1977 and 1978 that declared that according to the Cherokee Constitution of 1976, an individual must have a certificate of degree of Indian blood, CDIB card from the U.S. government before enrollment or voting were allowed. However, Article 3 of the 1976 Constitution had no mention of blood requirements for membership or voting rights. Swimmer's executive order was analyzed by some observers as one-way Swimmer excluded people who were supporting a rival candidate. Former Deputy Chief Kerry Wheeler for Principal Chief. After the 1983 Cherokee Nation elections and the re-election of Swimmer, Wheeler and his running mate Agnes Cohen initiated a series of legal proceedings, such as filing cases with the Cherokee Judicial Appeals Tribunal, petitioning the Bureau of Indian Affairs to conduct an investigation of the election, and filing a case with the U.S. District Court. Wheeler and Cohen alleged that the election was a violation of federal and tribal law, and that the Cherokee Freedmen were unjustly removed from voting because they were allies of Wheeler. All cases and subsequent appeals were defeated. Swimmer's successor and former Deputy Chief Wilma P. Mankiller was elected in 1985. In 1988, the Cherokee Registration Committee approved new guidelines for tribal membership that mirrored Swimmer's previous executive order regarding voting requirements. On September 12, 1992, the Cherokee Nation Council unanimously passed, with one member absent, an act requiring all enrolled members of the Cherokee Nation to have a CDIB card. Mankiller had reaffirmed, quote, Swimmer's order on CDIBs and voting. Principal Chief Mankiller signed and approved the legislation. From that point on, Cherokee Nation citizenship was granted only to individuals descended directly from an ancestor on the Cherokee by blood rolls of the Dawes Commission rolls. This completed the disenfranchisement of the Cherokee Freedmen descendants.
Wow, what? It's interesting to have the last name called Mankiller.
Yes.
Right?
Dang, Mankiller. Yeah, well, unfortunately, man, he killed and didn't do any service, or did a disservice to the Cherokee Freedmen. So, wow.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's so relatable. You know, you guys know I talk about my Shinnecock heritage, and they did not become fully vested in a treaty with the United States until 2010. And when they were trying to reclaim people, after banishing my great-grandmother from the tribe because she married a non-Indigenous, non-Shinnecock, non-Blackfoot person, when they tried to get their treaty, they came back to try and reclaim my grandmother. And my father has an Indigenous card, but his brother doesn't. My father has 6 children. I think my uncle has something like 31 children. None of the grandkids got reclaimed when my grandmother was reclaimed. So they really do kind of pick and choose these Indigenous people, like who they want to be native and who they don't want to be native. So interesting stuff.
So Friday, since you just mentioned that, I mean, in terms of descendants of U.S. chattel enslaved people here, some of the questions have been asked, like, well, what if you're mixed, or what if you're X, Y, Z? I mean? What are your thoughts on that?
So America is an interesting place, right? Because when we were enslaved, it was we had a 1-drop rule. When it came to giving white men agency in government in the rural South, we were worth 3/5 of a person. So I feel like this whole idea of a blood quantum, and I don't know how many people watched, I think it was in 2023, summer of 2023, where these same tribes that we're reading the treaties of were brought to Congress for sort of these crimes against like their freedmen. And during one of the testimony, and I forget the advocate's name, but she's a leading advocate on the freedmen side. She mentioned the fact that the whole blood quantum thing was something that the United States created. And if you, I mean, understand simple math, if you keep splitting a person and splitting a person and splitting a person, eventually that was a move by the United States to actually say at some point, none of y'all gonna be indigenous anymore, right? You got to keep marrying within your own ethnic tribe to try and keep your numbers quote unquote whole or pure. But it was a numbers game for the United States to introduce that. And when it comes to us, you know, your heritage and your lineage is what it is. And Obama, people don't know this about Obama's ancestry. But his great-great-grandfather, and you can look this up on Ancestry.com because they wrote an article about it, but we always talk about his mom, but his great-great-grandfather back when, who was enslaved in the United States, had children with a white mother, and their freedom followed the mother. And so Dunham's ancestry, she actually does have some African ancestry, but at the end of the day, like we have to pay attention to the laws that were written, and we didn't write the laws, right? We didn't have agency, we didn't have governance, and so I don't think like an Obama would classify because he had the one quote unquote ancestor, because according to that law, he became free, he became white, and we have the white mom that he has today, and we didn't write these rules. But we have to make sense in our repair out of the chaos created by rules we didn't write.
All right.
But we have other laws. We have other laws.
I wanted to add, I'm not going to name the group that I'm in, but there is a particular Facebook group I'm a part of. It's very resourceful, actually, but it's for people who are trying to get information about those who were U.S. colored troops or share information. And one person came in some time ago and they strongly suggested that they were a descendant of a person who was a color troop, member of the color troop. And they said this person was their great grandfather. And I'm like, wait a minute, how old are you? And it's not possible for your great grandfather to have been a U.S. colored troop. There's not enough time between the time they died and the time you were born for you to say that, right? And that's just something I said to myself. But I said that to say, I think it's hard for us to try to include folks who have people going way, 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 way back, and just one ancestor as part of our claim. I certainly don't want to exclude anyone, but we need to be looking at those who were impacted by slavery and the legacy. And my concern is you make your circle too big. Other people's, it's a slippery slope argument, which is why I'm just gonna be honest, y'all. I love AB 3121 for what it's done, but to include people who were quote unquote free before a certain time, that's a slippery slope argument, because some of those people, is very few, but some of those people did migrate to the U.S., right? But I think we have to be careful and mindful of crafting language and legislation to include probably a smaller category of folks than would be idealistic. We have to be realistic. Everybody's not going to make the cut, unfortunately. So I don't know who's going to make the decision or what the cutoff is going to be. But again, to your point, Friday, about the child taking the status of the mother and, them then going on to live in non-Black society and be able to benefit from not identifying or even looking Black, it would be unfair to say that they would be eligible. That's just my thought.
Yeah, I agree with you 110%. And I put in the chat, like, there are other sequential kind of laws we can look at. We can look at the actual Revolutionary War, the Treaty of Paris 1783, right? That's the treaty after the United States established itself as its own country. We can look at the 3/5 Compromise, the Casual Killing Act, hereditary slave laws, which ended in 1865, the California Fugitive Slave Law. All of these different states that were part of the Union had all these different laws. New Orleans had these noir laws. And so all of those things, in a way, should be the things that count over multiple generations, not just this, one ubiquitous ancestor. And then, you are tied to that white mother. And for all the rest of the days of your family, you're white in the United States. Like that, no. You're excluded from all of these other things, and you need the multi-generational I think pieces to really secure, to Sharice's point, the claim that we have to make as American freedmen.
All right, I guess Friday, you're up.
All right, and shout out Chief Amigo. He giving some references. He's saying use the Cherokee treaties of 1866, Articles 4 and 9. So we need to double check what those say specifically to see if that can be helpful to the American freedmen claim. So I'm picking up at activism of the 1940s to 2000s. In the 1940s, more than 100 descendants of freedmen from the Wallace Roll, Kern Clifton Roll, and the Dawes Rolls formed the Cherokee Freedmen's Association. The organization filed a petition with the Indian Claims Commission in 1951 over their exclusion from citizenship. The petition was denied in 1961. The Indian Claims Commission stated that their claims to tribal citizenship were individual in nature and outside of the United States government's jurisdiction. The Cherokee Freedmen's Association was faced with two issues regarding their case. On one hand, the Dawes Rolls, a federally mandated tally, was accepted as defining who were legally and politically Cherokee, and most of the CFA members were not of Dawes Rolls descent. On the other hand, the court saw their claim as a tribal matter and outside of their jurisdiction. Appeals stretched to 1971, but all were denied, with only few legal victories to show for their 20-year effort. That's terrible. On July 7, 1983, the Reverend Roger H. Nero and 4 other Cherokee freedmen were turned away from the Cherokee polls as a result of the newly instituted Cherokee voting policy. A freedman who voted in the 1979 Cherokee election, Nero, and colleagues sent a complaint to the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, claiming discrimination on the basis of race. On June 18, 1984, Nero and 16 freedmen descendants filed a class action suit against the Cherokee Nation, Principal Chief Ross Swimmer, tribal officials and Tribal Election Committee, the United States, the Office of the President, the Department of the Interior, the Secretary of the Interior, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and 3 Muskogee, Oklahoma, BIA officials were named as defendants. The suit sought nearly $750 million, about $1.93 billion in 2023 dollars in damages, and asked for the 1983 tribal election to be declared null and void. The court ruled against the plaintiff freedmen because of jurisdictional issues, with the same ruling made by the Court of Appeals on December 12, 1989. The courts held that the case should have been filed in claims court against the district court due to the amount asked in the lawsuit. No judgment was made as to the merits of the case itself. Bernice Riggs, a freedman descendant, sued the Cherokee Nation's tribal registrar, Layla Umer-Teskey, in 1998 over the latter denying the former's October 16, 1996 citizenship application. On August 15, 2001, the Judicial Appeals Tribunal, now the Cherokee National Supreme Court, ruled in the case of Riggs versus Umar Teskey. Umar Teskey. That while Riggs adequately documented her Cherokee blood ancestry, she was denied citizenship because her ancestors on the Dawes rolls were only listed on the Freedmen rolls. In September 2001, Marilyn Van, that's who said that, a Freedmen descendant, was denied Cherokee Nation citizenship on the same grounds as Bernice Riggs. Despite documented Cherokee blood ancestry from previous rolls, Van's father was listed only as a Freedman on the Dawes rolls in 2002. Van and other Freedmen descendants started the Descendant of Freedmen of the Five Civilized Tribes organization. The group garnered support from other Freedmen descendants as well as support from Cherokee and non-Cherokee. On May 17, 2005, the Delaware Tribe of Indians, one of two non-Cherokee tribes that the Cherokee Nation members by treaty unanimously approved a resolution to endorse the organization and show support for Freedmen efforts. Well,
y'all,
now familiar though, like we can't win in courts either.
This is heavy, right? And the reason I say that is because for me, the guide for our Freedmen Affairs Agency at the state and federal level is the BIA, right? Yeah. And how the BIA interacts with the state, in particular California, because we have several non-federally recognized tribes that are recognized by the state of California. And I can honestly see us going through this same exercising, this expanding and contracting of eligibility based on the temperature of society or the temperature of what are the Freedmen thinking today. And so I think it would have really been helpful to have someone from the BIA to testify for the reparations hearings, and hopefully in the future there will be someone to kind of provide best practices. Here's the things we messed up on. You guys don't make the mistakes on this. Here are suggestions for admission, or people should be eligible on a rolling basis. You start small and then you expand later, whatever it is. But I also want to point out, even though this is a guide, and there are nations in the state who are not federally recognized, and they're being recognized by California on a rolling basis. And I remember my friend reached out to me a few years ago about an LA Times article, and she said, "This is my friend featured in this article. I want to know what you think about it." And it said that the Bruce family should not get their land back. She was against it, and her argument was, well, we haven't got our land at all, and we're not recognized, so they shouldn't get anything. And I bring that up because I think it's really important to have allyship in the Indigenous community for our fight and our efforts. Because again, for me, they are the guide of what to do and what not to do. And I think to Chief Mingo's point about we already have a lot of precedent for what we're trying to do. And so I think it would be good to bring them in to help provide a foundation of what it could look like for our agency.
All right. Go, Friday, you wouldn't say something or no?
No. Sharice is always hitting it on the head. I'm less familiar with the BIA, so I'm definitely going to, look into that. As NAASD has that executive order demand for a Freedmen's Bureau. I will add this, in an international lens, after attending that UN third session on people of African descent in Costa Rica, they are looking, because their government literally has just started recognizing like the indigenous tribes of Costa Rica, but the Afro descendants don't technically have any standing. So they're trying to create their own tribe. Having, qualifications. They are not doing any blood quantum sort of thing, but it's interesting that other people with their governments are going through like the same thing that we as American freedmen are going through here in the United States.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Okay, so I don't know. Let's see how long this section is. Okay, so maybe we'll wrap up in about another 5 to 6 minutes. This BIA controversy and temporary. Okay, yeah. All right, maybe I'll wrap up at this section and then we'll stop here and then continue the next time we meet up. All right, 2004 to 2017. Reinstatement and loss of citizenship. On September 26, 2004, Lucy Allen, a Freedmen descendant, filed a lawsuit with the Cherokee Nation Supreme Court, asserting that the acts bearing Freedmen descendants, or barring Freedmen descendants from tribal membership, were unconstitutional. In the case of Allen versus Cherokee Nation Tribal Council on March 7, 2006, the Cherokee Nation Judicial Appeals Tribunal ruled in Allen's favor in a 2-to-1 decision that the descendants of the Cherokee Freedmen were Cherokee citizens and were allowed to enroll in the Cherokee Nation. This was based on the facts that the Freedmen were listed as members on the Dawes Rolls and that the 1975 Cherokee Constitution did not exclude them from citizenship or have a blood requirement for membership. This ruling overturned the previous ruling in Riggs versus Umerstetsky. More than 800 Freedmen descendants have enrolled in the Cherokee Nation since the ruling was made, out of up to 45,000 potentially eligible people. Chad Corntassel Smith, principal chief of the Cherokee Nation, stated his opposition to the ruling after it was announced. Smith called for a constitutional convention for referendum, petition to amend the tribal constitution to deny citizenship to the Cherokee Freedmen descendants. All right, quick interjection. That is some serious anti-blackness. All right, let's continue. During a meeting on June 12, 2006, the Cherokee Nation Tribal Council voted in a 13-2 decision to amend the Constitution to restrict Cherokee citizenship to descendants of persons listed as, quote, Cherokee by blood, end quote, on the Dawes Rolls. It rejected a resolution calling for a special election on the issue. Supporters of the special election, including former Cherokee Nation Deputy Chief John Ketcher and Cherokee citizens, siding with Smith, circulated a referendum petition for a vote to remove the Freedmen descendants as members. Chief Smith announced that the issue of the membership for Cherokee Freedmen was being considered for a vote related to proposed amendments to the Cherokee Nation Constitution. Freedmen descendants opposed the election. Vicky Baker filed a protest in the Cherokee Nation Supreme Court over the legality of the petition and allegations of foul play involved in the petition drive. Though the Cherokee Supreme Court ruled against Baker, 2 justices in the Cherokee Supreme Court, Darrell Dowdy and Stacey Leeds, filed separate dissenting opinions against the ruling. Justice Leeds wrote an 18-page dissent concerning falsified information in the petition drive and fraud by Darren Buzzard and Dwayne Barrett, 2 of the petition's circulators. Leeds wrote, in the initiative petition process, there are numerous irregularities, clear violations of Cherokee law, and it has been shown that some of the circulators perjured their sworn affidavits. I cannot in good conscience join in the majority opinion. Despite the justices' dissent and the removal of 800 signatures from the petition, the goal of 2,100 signatures was met. John Vilay, attorney for the Freedmen descendants, filed a motion for a preliminary injunction in the Van action in U.S. District Court. Judge Henry H. Kennedy Jr. ruled against the Freedmen descendants' motion to halt the upcoming election because the election may not have voted out the Freedmen. After a few days, the tribe voted on March 3, 2007, on whether to amend the Constitution to exclude the Cherokee Freedmen descendants from citizenship. Registered Cherokee Freedmen voters were able to participate in the election by a 76% 6,702 to 24% 2,041 margin out of a total of 8,743 votes cast by registered voters. The referendum resulted in membership rules that excluded the Cherokee Freedmen descendants. The turnout was small by comparison. The previous Cherokee general election turnout had totaled 13,914 registered voters. The Freedmen descendants protested their ouster from the tribe with demonstrations at the BIA office in Oklahoma and at the Oklahoma State Capitol. Due to the issues of citizenship in the election and the resulting exclusion of Freedmen descendants, the Cherokee Nation was criticized by United States groups such as the Congressional Black Caucus and the National Congress of Black Women. On March 14, 2007, 26 members of the Congressional Black Caucus sent a letter to Carl J. Artman, Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs, urging the Bureau of Indian Affairs to investigate the legality of the March 3rd decision. Sharice and Friday, do you have about another, I guess, to 11:30? Or should we wrap it up here?
It's up to you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Friday,
I'm good.
You good? Okay. Maybe we'll read another 2 sections and then we'll wrap it up.
So I just wanted to point out, I'm not exactly sure the trajectory of these cases, but I don't like to use him as an example because my foot is currently on his neck. But you know, the government courts try to discourage form shopping, right? And that's something that someone like Edward Blum has tried to use to his advantage because he's hoping to appeal some of these anti-Black cases he keeps filing because he's trying to get to the Supreme Court and he knows what judges may be more sensitive to his cause, right? So I'll be interested to know if the judges in these cases, the federal judges especially, if they are in Oklahoma, in the Oklahoma area, if they are descendants of Native tribes, etc. Because I feel like, you know, again, trying to go through the courts is hard, but you also get a disadvantage because despite they're supposed to be a neutral, judges still bring their own personal bias into the courtroom. So I just wanted to mention that. So we are on to BIA controversy and temporary reinstatement. Okay, the 2007 election was criticized for having been conducted under a constitution that was not approved by the Secretary of the Interior. On May 22nd, 2007, the Cherokee Nation received notice from the BIA that the Cherokee Nation's amendments to the 1975 Cherokee Nation Constitution were rejected because they required BIA approval, which had not been obtained. The BIA also stated concerns that the Cherokee Nation had excluded the Cherokee Freedmen from voting for the constitutional amendments since they had been improperly shorn of their rights of citizenship years earlier and were not allowed to participate in the constitutional referendum. This is considered a violation of the 1970 Principles Chief Acts, which requires that all tribal members must vote. Chief Smith disbanded the Judicial Appeals Tribunal and created a new Cherokee Supreme Court under the new Constitution. Oh my goodness. A question remains regarding the legitimacy of the court as the United States has not approved the Constitution as required under the previous Cherokee Constitution. According to Chief Smith, the Indian Self-Determination and Education Assistance Act of 1975 overrode the 1970 Principal Chiefs Act, and the Cherokee Nation had the sovereign right to determine its citizenship requirements. Smith stated that the Cherokee Nation Supreme Court ruled that the Cherokee Nation could take away the approval authority it had granted the federal government, and the nation will abide by the court's decision. Despite the ruling, the issue of amending the process of federal approval was placed on the ballot for the June 23, 2007 general election. Cherokee voters approved the amendment to remove federal oversight by a 2-to-1 margin, but the BIA still has to approve. Jeanette Hanna, director of the BIA's Eastern Oklahoma Regional Office, said that the regional office has recommended approval of the vote on removal of secretarial oversight. Heading into the 2007 election, the Cherokee Nation was not permitting the freedmen to vote. Attorney John Bailey again filed a motion for preliminary injunction. On May 15, 2007, Cherokee District Court Judge John Cripps signed an order for the Cherokee freedmen descendants to be temporarily reinstated as citizens of the Cherokee Nation while appeals are pending in the Cherokee Nation court system. This was due to an injunction filed by the freedmen descendants' court-appointed attorney for their case in tribal court. The Cherokee Nation's Attorney General Diane Hammonds complied with the court order. Bailey, on behalf of Marilyn Vann and 6 freedmen descendants, argued the late actions that protected 2,800 freedmen, but not all who were entitled to citizenship, were insufficient. But Judge Henry Kennedy denied the motion. On June 23, 2007, Chad Smith was re-elected for a 4-year term as principal chief with 58.8% of the vote. It's a shame. It's 2007. That's a shame.
Yeah, that's terrible. But you know what the percentages remind me of? Basically, these Cherokee freedmen are in the same boat that we are in. And it's a numbers game. You got 70% of the vote. And this was in March of 2007 when they cast their vote. 8,000 votes were cast. 70% of the people who voted basically said, no, we're not going to, give you rights. So they continue to exclude the freedmen descendants. And here in the United States, like the white population is about 70%. So numerically, it's like, how do you can't legislate for yourself. You can't vote. You don't have the number of votes to like have any sort of agency or autonomy. It's interesting. I wonder if those Cherokee freedmen went to apply to just be their own tribal nations, like what the United States would do with that. But it's almost like they're in the same boat with us and being sort of bound by these laws that they didn't totally create. They don't have a place to actually hear their grievances. Like, where the hell is Caesar? Who is that in this scenario? Where do you go for your quote unquote justice? It's like the same predicament that we're in, and it does not help. That more people get piled on. We can't even settle what we're working on, and more people get piled into a system where they get to assimilate fully. And then we American freedmen do not. The Cherokee freedmen do not. And that's just a shame.
Yeah, I literally was thinking, why don't they start their own, tribe or entity because of what's going on. I don't know what the process to be federally recognized, how that process works. If it's at the local level and then, it's approved or finalized by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. I'm not sure because the BIA has so many divisions and growing, but they do. The BIA is under the Department of Interior, and they are autonomous in the sense that everyone, the leadership in the BIA are all registered with different nations. But like I said, I'm not sure how they manage their affairs day to day.
Yeah, that's their Congress. And so, yeah, we should have like representatives from all 50 US states for American freedmen where we're housed under the Freedmen's Bureau, but where those are elected positions and like people can run so that we always have our sort of mini government housed within the United States government. And yeah, I didn't realize it was the BIA. I've always referred to it as the Congress of Chiefs. So I guess I need to.
I think there is like at the local level, they have quote unquote autonomy, but there are still things that based on the treaty that they have with the federal government, some of the things that are managed, like the land that they have is managed under a land trust by the BIA. There's certain, like I said, there's a way that they interact. Like I said, I wish the BIA would have been able to testify to kind of give more clarity, because it's for me, it's hard to try to work through what are the rules and how do they actually work in practice and not just on paper.
Right. It's a learning process. That's why we're doing this with ETM Media, making sure everybody is learning all the reparations they can. So shout out Kim, Darlene, Umoya, for keeping it together, because this is important stuff. So I'm going to try, this next section is really small, congressional issues. On June 21st, 2007, U.S. Representative Diane Watson, Democrat out of California, one of the 25 Congressional Black Caucus members who signed a letter asking the BIA to investigate the Freedmen situation, introduced H.R. 2824. We should put that in the chat. H.R. 2824. This bill seeks to sever the Cherokee Nation's federal recognition, strip the Cherokee Nation of their federal funding, estimated at $300 million annually, and stop the Cherokee Nation's gaming operations if the tribe does not honor the Treaty of 1866. H.R. 2824 was co-signed by 11 Congress members and was referred to the Committee of Natural Resources and Committee of the Judiciary. Chief Smith is now over Parks and Recreation, but at that time he was over the BIA. Just a side note for y'all, because I pay attention to some of these people. Chief Smith issued a statement saying that the introduction of this bill is really a misguided attempt to deliberately harm the Cherokee Nation in retaliation of this fundamental principle that is shared by more than 500 other Indian tribes. The National Congress of American Indians expressed, so this is what I was thinking about, the Congress of Indians, expressed their disappointment of the bill. On September 26, 2008, Congress cleared the housing bill H.R. 2786, the reauthorization of the Native American Housing and Self-Determination Act, including a provision stating that the Cherokee Nation can receive federal housing benefits as long as the tribal court order allowing the citizenship for Cherokee freedmen descendants is intact, or some settlement is reached in the citizenship issue and litigation involving the Cherokee freedmen descendants. The House of Representatives version of the bill would have denied funds unless the freedmen descendants were restored to citizenship. The Senate version of the bill had no mention of the Cherokee Nation or the Cherokee freedmen descendants. Paul Lumley, executive director of the National American Indian Housing Council, said that the NAIHC worked with members of the Congressional Black Caucus to create a compromise, resulting in the addition of the Cherokee freedmen stipulation in the bill. So apparently Congress does understand specificity. Apparently they do know how to recognize people in a peoplehood when it's time to make negotiations. Yet they somehow, when it comes to American freedmen, people whose ancestors who were emancipated by the 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution, somehow we are just black. Sharice opened with this point. We can't get a census designation that ethnically identifies us as the descendants of persons enslaved in the United States. So we continue to play, this game of we don't understand. You have full citizenship. We don't care that you're a numeric minority and you can't self-govern and you have no agency. Chief Smith, we've tried to meet, the National Assembly of American Slavery Descendants tried to meet with his department because Sherrod Brown out of Ohio had written the African American Burial Site Revision Act, of that particular act. I'm not saying it 100% right, but it was a bill. I think it either passed in 2022 or 2023. It has a sunset date. It has a tiny budget where we could have gone to local organizations to actually clean up some of our burial sites that have been neglected even on American forts that were owned by historically Black churches that, the earth has reclaimed. People don't know where folks are buried, to actually go into our community with that money and clean it up. But there's a caveat in there that also makes the funding available to Native Americans. And I am sorry, I don't know who Chief Smith, who is now the director of Parks and Recreation, National Parks, I don't know that he has our best interest at heart.
So that's why, like I said, I think it's important. Like I said, the BIA is under the Department of Interior, and they have their own leadership. And I believe the head of the BIA is appointed by the president. I believe it's a presidential appointment, etc. So I feel like an easy ally is the BIA, right? But to your point, we need to be selfish in our legislation. There was a commission, I think it's sunset now, just maybe in January or February. There was a commission in Greenbelt, Maryland, a reparations commission. And one of my friends was on it. And the commission was for Native Americans and Black people. I'm like, why are you splitting the resources? For what? It doesn't, it just doesn't make any sense to me. But that's interesting. That's what Harvard did with their reparations plan as well. They included Indigenous and West Indians into their plan too. And I asked, why are you including Native Americans? They have their own entity sitting at Harvard right now, and they have a conference every year. And the first thing that they were going to do as part of this reparations report and money that they were giving away was go have a panel or a conference with the Native Americans. I'm like, when is this going to be about us? When? So
the louder we are, the more noise we make. If we can get people in streets and to show up, and it was the Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott. When there was change, when the pocketbooks were hurt. And in this context, there are so many corporations. How do we as people effectively do a boycott effort? But honestly, if we just lived on necessities for a year, have minimalist birthdays, minimal to no Christmas, no Easter, don't buy nothing. Don't buy even the Juneteenth stuff they selling unless you're actually buying it from like Black companies. If we as a people could move to do that, a year of necessities, all of a sudden people would notice things. Don't buy no new sneakers unless your kids actually have growing feet and need new shoes. Don't buy new clothes. Do a year of just shopping in your own closet. Getting together and doing clothes exchanges with actual people and not buying anything new. If we as a people could do that for 2025, so that we can start being heard in the first 100 days of the new administration coming in, whoever it is, Trump or Biden, it doesn't matter. We got to start flexing at our purses, and we got to start flexing when we show up at these meetings. Call in, know what's going on in your local administrations, your municipalities, your state, and what your congressional and senatorial people are doing up on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to make 2 points. One point is, as we go through this legislative process here in California with the reparations bills, and we do some grassroots advocacy. I was talking to an elder brother and his wife. I believe it was his wife when I was doing some errands. And this is in terms of just engagement. And so we were talking, he was pretty discouraged. Even though I told him about the current movement that's happening with these bills and legislation, but he was like, and I'm just saying, he said this, the white man's not going to do X, Y, and Z, the white man, and then, he starts going on talking about, they don't want to hear from me because X, Y, and I just told him, yeah, they do. Yeah, I mean, talking to me isn't going to help. I mean, reach out, to your legislator, reach out to your congressperson. Tell them how you feel. Like, we need to engage in this process and not be afraid to engage in this process. And granted, there's a lot of anti-Blackness going on here, and they're rewriting the rules, changing the goalposts every day. We still have to engage in this. So yeah, thank you, Friday, for mentioning that, because I just want to just let everybody know not to get discouraged in this fight for our repair. This is your birthright, family. This is what you're owed. This is not something that's just like, oh, we deserve it and somehow it's a charity give. No, we have the absolute right to have freedom and justice and happiness in this land that we built. I mean, that's plain and simple. And I'm glad we're actually going through some of these bills, this HR 2786, and it's kind of segueing to it, just so I understand, Friday and Sharice. It says, included a provision stating that the Cherokee Nation can receive federal housing benefits as long as a tribal court order allowing the citizenship for Cherokee Freedmen descendants is intact, or some settlement is reached in the citizenship issue in litigation involving the Cherokee Freedmen descendants. So am I understanding this correct, that the court or the legislation was basically saying that if you don't work something out with the Cherokee Freedmen, you're not going to get these particular benefits? Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct. And I'm actually shocked. I knew Diane Watson was about that life, but I didn't know she was about that life. And people
and Maxine Waters.
Huh?
Her and Maxine Waters really championed that.
Awesome. I'm all for that. Too bad that she's retired, but I think that is a good again, that's a great precedent. Great information about people that may be sympathetic to specificity, because you were specific for the freedmen, the Black freedmen, so you should be specific for these reparations too, right? The other thing I wanted to bring up, Umoya, to your point about folks being afraid and not using their voice. I tell people all the time, I'm with you. These politicians want to hear from you. That is their job. But I think we oftentimes deal with internalized anti-Black racism. And it's something we feel inside of ourselves. I don't deserve it. We don't deserve it. Or reparations is seen as a handout. I'm not begging, quote unquote, a white man for anything. I'm not begging for this. But this is not about begging. This is a demand. There's a difference. And we need to call out internalized anti-Black racism. So folks understand what it is. This is something that's been taught to us, that we are not as deserving. That is why we keep coming up with people of color and BIPOC, and we going to advocate for our community. And we go in there, talk about Black and brown. No, talk about Black and be proud of it, right? That was the whole reason for the movement. I'm Black and I'm proud. Say it with your chest that you are Black. Friday, to your point, I'm down for a boycott, or if you want to call it an economic sanction. And there's a book. I don't know if I actually have the book. I may have it. But Maggie Anderson wrote a book called Our Black Year. And she lays out how her family only purchased necessities and household goods from Black-owned companies. It is a little out of date, so some of these companies might not be in business anymore. But I think it's a great guide and great tool on how to save money and use resources from our community exclusively. I think that would be a great call out, a great call to action for 2025. And if enough noise is made to get people's attention, because right now our Black youth are focused on Palestine. As a matter of fact, the valedictorian for Morehouse, he wants to know about Palestine. That's what the kids, if Biden doesn't do for Palestine, there's no ceasefire, I'm not voting. Man, y'all, can you guys get that excited and be that vocal about reparations? Please. That's all I got today. That's it.
we appreciate whatever you got. That was very well said. And and it's very interesting, because when you do talk about the quote unquote Palestine, what's going over. Look, family, our non-Black people out there, we're not against y'all. Okay? Well, I can speak for myself. We're not against y'all. You guys got to understand this. We're just trying to advocate for ourselves and what's right for us. Okay? But there's been so much anti-Blackness throughout history that we have to start calling stuff to the carpet, and we just have to start calling it, just saying, here's what it is. We want everybody to flourish, right, in the United States and globally. But if we're constantly and consistently being your just lapdog in every instance, that we just can't continue that. That's just ethnogenocide. And just if you're a just person and you're humane, you would see that. I mean, we get comments on our videos all the time that we don't respond. And look, family, and that's another thing. If you comment on one of our videos that we post, as long as you're not, being explicit, you talking about children or anything like that, we're going to leave them up because we believe, First Amendment. So do what you need to do. But somebody wrote a big, long dissertation, I think, on our last video that we posted about, this 1866 treaty that we're reading. And it was a long dissertation. I didn't read the whole thing, so shout out to him. But I mean, just the level of ignorance. I mean, even some things where they talk about, California didn't have slavery. Oh God, here we go again. I mean, did you not even watch the videos? Like, do you not? So somebody responded, and shout out to that person who responded and say, hey, did you even Google? Did you use Google? And also read the 1,000-page California Reparations Final Task Report as well. That will probably help in your research. All right, family. So let's go through some of these comments here before we wrap it up, because that's what we do. That's just tradition. So let's go. Black people are not indigenous to the Americas. I don't know. That might be debatable, but let's move on to the next one. But shout out, let's whoever once again is, shout out to you. Appreciate you for coming through. We appreciate everybody. Good morning, family. What up, Nita? This is a great thing you're doing and will help our communities better understand the legislative process. As always, Nita, we greatly appreciate you. Pi 180 says, sue under the U.S. state sponsors of terrorism fund. All right, learn something new every day. For our reparations. Hi, Nita. All right. Shout out to Dana Dorsey. Hi, everyone tuning in. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. Chief Mingo, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. Shout out to Chief Mingo in the building. Book The Case for Black Reparations, Boris Bitker. All right. Duly noted. Agree right that EO for Freedmen Bureau and NAASD Repair Act recommendations. Friday, what's EO?
Executive order.
Gotcha. All right. Another book here, Native Land Talk by Yal Ben. How do you pronounce his last name? Zvi? Yal Ben.
Yeah, maybe Zvi. Ben Zvi. Ben Zvi, because you say it like, yeah, Ben Zvi.
Ben Zvi, okay. Chief Mingo. That's the Native American narrative. Negroes love the Curtis Act and the Cherokee treaties. That's Juju ? What's up, Shah Sun? All right, we need to read the Curtis Act. All right. We lost because we didn't read the treaties in the Curtis Act. All right. We have other laws. If your ancestors were subject to Casual Killing Act, Jim Crow laws, generational born into servitude. All right. It's not going to happen without the American Indians / Negroes come first. All right. You guys have to understand that Negroes / Freemen are the American Indians. Use the Cherokee Treaty of 1866, Article 4 and 9. I'm confused on why Black people want to be acknowledged as Indians anyway. Some laws for you. Choctaw-Chickasaw Treaty of 1866, Article 4 with the United States. There's no difference between a Negro and a Choctaw. Chickasaw Indian. All right, just gonna jog down. Treaty 1830, Article 14. All righty. Negroes are the beneficiary class. We are already recognized as the Indians that became citizens of the United States. All right, use the treaties, then Curtis Act. All right. Something we all should look into, HR 2824. All right, I think we have two more. All right, we have to know players to the game so we can stop being served on the menu. Hi. What up, Nita? All right, so on that note, just want to thank everyone for showing up, and happy pre-Memorial Day, which, by the way, shout out to our ancestors for creating that wonderful holiday that we're all going to be celebrating and taking the day off tomorrow. So happy early Memorial Day to everyone. Friday, Sharice, any last words?
Keep up the good work.
Yeah, keep up the good work, and let us just remember that it was after the Civil War that the newly freed decided to bury those that had lost their life in Civil War with decency and respect. And so before you ask another Black American to retract their demand for the debt known as reparations because of the people that died, remember that we're the original people who honored the deaths and the lives that were given for our freedom. So thank you so much. To Sharice's point, keep up the excellent work. This is important.
All right. Thank you, Sharice. Thank you, Friday, for your time. As always, really appreciate your work and your continued work in this fight for reparations that we will get, and we're planning to get for redress and repair for our ancestors and those descendants who come from those enslaved here in the United States. Thanks, everyone, for joining. We will continue this. Don't know exactly when, but we will continue this because we do have a couple more readings on this. So on that note, thank you once again, everyone, and we will see you next time. On that note, peace and reparations.
The way it currently stands, forced labor, slavery takes precedence over rehabilitation and public safety.
Oh, by the way, while the Biden administration gives reparations to everyone but free people, look at the billions he has run over to Ukraine.
We don't have Black grocery stores because if you think about it now, just to get in that supply chain, it's almost unheard of.
They don't want the truth to get out. Okay? I don't want to know what my family did or what all these people did and all this stuff like that. Okay? You read that 500-page report.
There's this thing called white superiority and Black inferiority. That mindset allows all of the behaviors that we've seen across generations, allows for the construction of these policies and practices and systems and structures that continue to oppress us. This is not a handout. This is a debt that is owed.
You know, Allensworth was like the internet of his time in 1904, 1905.
The total Black population in California is about 2.6 million, and then of that, the descendants compose about 2.2 million of that. So California, with a multi-billion-dollar surplus, can absolutely afford to satisfy the international terms for reparations, beginning with compensation.
Any financial obstacle that exists that impedes the success of increasing financial prosperity needs to be dealt with and eliminated.
No matter where we've been, no matter what part of this fight we've been in, we've been harmed, and we've had harm done to us specifically.
When I got to Los Angeles, this was some of the worst segregation I'd ever seen. And remember, I'm telling you, I'm from Mississippi.
Because as you can see, I'm giving you broken history right now, you know? But I had to give it to you guys today. I said, no, I got to show them this because it's so precious and nobody really knows about it.
Black people don't have that kind of luxury.
our historically black communities have been redistricted multiple times.
Now listen, if you can't handle the TR roof, don't tune in.